Trigger warning. In this episode, we will be discussing potentially triggering subject matter, specifically the rising suicide rates among African American youth and children. When we get to that section, there will be another warning and instructions on how to skip that section and listen to the rest of the episode. It's not enough to survive in this racialized world. We are learning together to thrive. This is Race, Health, and Happiness, and I'm your host, Dr. O. Today, my guest is Dr. Lulu, aka the Momatrician. She is a former lieutenant colonel and commander in the U.S. Air Force, a Nigerian-born board-certified pediatrician, a 5-time best-selling author and mother of 3, and a 2-time TEDx speaker. And she coaches parents with LGBTQ youth. Dr. Lulu, welcome to Race, Health, and Happiness.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. How are you doing?
I am doing well, and I'm really looking forward to how we're going to have this very important conversation. Now, I know you do so many things, and so I think it's really important for our audience to get a sense of what your superpower is. What do you feel is your superpower, Dr. Lulu?
Just one?
No, some people have many. It's the gifts that you were brought to share. So which ones?
I think my voice is my ultimate superpower. Ironically, I've had vocal cord mishaps during surgery, which is not good. But that is my moneymaker. That is my superpower. I think that should be, for those who are orators, that should definitely be their superpower, because that's the one thing that they seek to silence. They can't silence your silence, but they can silence your talking and agitating. So I think my voice will be my ultimate superpower. My energy does go before my voice, ahead of me, but my voice definitely is not a very distant second. So I think my voice is my superpower. You will see me before you hear me, but once you hear me, you cannot unhear me. So yeah, my voice.
I love that. I do personally also say that my voice is my superpower. And for me, at least, voice, I can't sing to help anyone. So you need, okay. So yeah, it's not a singing voice, but it's the speaking voice as the orator. So I think that is really, really cool. Yes, I think the first time. And
you can sing too. I think we can also sing.
Not me, girl, not me.
I hear you. I'm like you, and I have a beautiful alto, but I just sing because I can. I sing because I'm free, and I make a joyful noise, and that's all there is. And now you have a choice to listen or not. But I will sing.
There you go.
I will sing.
Yes, I love that. So I think, I gave your bio, which didn't even, to me, capture all of the things that you do with your voice and your other superpower, your energy. And so I did my best to describe your many hats and identities, but I feel like I might have left things out. I think it's really important for me to also let you talk about how you self-identify. I know that I didn't mention that you're a Black woman. I know you self-identify as bisexual. I know that, you're the proud mama of a transgendered woman. But is there anything else that I left out, or is there an essence that you want to share with our audience of your essence?
I think my essence comes from my grandfather, the one that I met. I'm my grandfather's granddaughter. I'm the first of 64, I think, at last count. So I'm a proud granddaughter of my grandfather, who was a traditional bone setter, never set one foot in medical school. But when the general hospitals will deem the leg unrepairable and for amputation, they would come to my grandfather's hospital and they would walk out of there. I don't know how long it took. It didn't matter, but he would go into the woods and sure enough would come back with the right mixture of herbs, and never went to school for one day. That's from whence I come. Now, when I said I was going to be an architect, my dad said, why? That's for like men. Why don't you do something more feminine? I was like what? He said, well, like pharmacy. I'm like, pharmacy?
I didn't know pharmacy was feminine. Okay.
Well, so, we have to love him, as he is and leave him. He said, your cousin is a pharmacist. And to him, that was the height of, then I was like, wait, if I'm going to do anything medical, I might as well go to med school. And he was like, what? Why? I'm like, well, why not? And I was like, okay, I'll see. And I was like, I'll see. And so I went to med school on a dare. But we believe in tradition, and we believe in which is what they call akaraka, which is your handprint, your fingerprints, your handprint, actually, your palm reading. Let me put it that way. That's what you would call. But akaraka translates to handprint. So we go with that. So we believe in handprints, and we also believe in reincarnation and all that. And I reincarnated as a teacher. I came back as a lady who was a teacher. And so when I told my dad that I got a what they call it, adjunct professor position,
right? Yes,
at St. Edward's College, he shed the first tear I've seen in a long time. He said, "That's her. She is you. You are her." That lady was a teacher. But before that, I wanted to be a doctor. And they were like, well, actually, when they looked at my palm reading, it was a teacher that they saw. And then my brother was the doctor, but, whatever, that kind of thing.
Right. The spot's taken.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So my brother is an engineer, don't want to see blood with his eyes. But you have to hold space for tradition and for the people who, before you, your ancestors saw you and they saw how far you will go. And now it's just for you to go and fulfill your destiny and surpass your ancestors' wildest dreams, which is what I am. So I never met my great-grandparents on either side, but I did meet all four grandparents, and I am proudly theirs. And I know when I talk about LGBTQ plus awareness and acceptance, people look at me with, wait, but you're Nigerian, wait, but you're a Christian, wait, but you're Black.
Pause. Dr. Lulu is letting us know all her identities here, and they're not what we're used to hearing as a combination. So, she's a medical doctor practicing in the United States, born and raised in Nigeria, and Christian, and a proud member of the LGBTQ community. She has such a richness of medical expertise and personal experience that I hope wherever you are in your journey of understanding and or celebrating Black LGBTQ community perspectives, I welcome you to listen fully to this episode. And to make that journey easier for you, in our show notes, we have a lot of information so you can learn more. We have definitions for you. And for those of you who are going through this personally in your own life, we got you. We got support resources in the show notes too. Okay, let's go.
And I know when I talk about LGBTQ plus awareness and acceptance, people look at me with, wait, but you're Nigerian, wait, but you're a Christian, wait, but you're Black. But I said, but I am my grandfather's daughter. And I say that because my grandfather was the person in my village who stopped the killing of twins. So I've come from a long line of rebels. He was like, I didn't go to school, but if God, which is Amadioha or Chukwu, if this entity,
an Igbo culture,
yes, if this deity blesses, if we celebrate the birth of one child as a blessing, I'm thinking that the birth of two is double so. So I'm not killing my twins. And they're like, what? Oh my God, abomination. And you know what he did? He put his machete on the ground. And when you slide a machete into the ground, that's a dare. If you pick the machete, you must fight to the death. So it's like, I'm putting my machete down, and let me see who wants to dare tell me I'm going to kill my own child. And that was when people were like, well, you know what? Well, if he's not going to kill his twins, I'm not going to kill my twins. And then that's how that started. So when I tell people that, the fight in me is the fight that has been like, it was blown into me, because that's what we do. We blow the thing into the child and say all these things. That was given to me from the twins that were killed, from their parents and their parents' parents. So it's an honorable work. I don't take it very lightly. I take it very seriously. N=1. I'm the only Black doctor, Nigerian physician, Nigerian, American, whatever, that's doing this work. My grandfather was the only one too.
I think that is, that's very powerful, that you are coming from a legacy of disruptors. And I would just, explain to our audience that in Nigeria, which is actually a country that is known to have the largest number of twins, globally. We don't know why, but the largest number of twins. Historically, my tribe, your tribe, the same tribe or nation, the Igbo people, had a belief that one twin was good and one twin was evil, and so one would be killed. And so your father, and this is not actually a colonial perspective that was imposed on us. This was tradition. And so your father questioning status quo and disrupting status quo, I think, is very powerful within our own Igbo tradition. And then now you are disrupting status quo in so many ways. I mean, just your life journey, your story, and many stories, because you are not just one story, I think disrupts status quo in so many ways. I have to ask, I mean, you just said it yourself, you're, a Nigerian woman, you are, you self-identify as a lesbian, you have a son who, you have two sons and one child who was assigned male at birth, but now is a transgendered woman. So going through transition gender-wise. And we don't see that often from a Nigerian woman, particularly not a Nigerian physician. And then now you're a coach and engaging in prevention. Now, all that you've done, somebody is listening, right? A young person is listening and saying, wow, but that's not an easy journey. And so I wanted to ask you, not just as a Black woman, but all of the different identities that you have you experienced barriers from community or from medicine or however you describe that? Have you experienced that, or has it been largely a straightforward path for you?
I think it's a little bit of both. Growing up in the northern part of Nigeria, where there are majority Muslims, I learned very quickly the power of language. Again, why I go back to say my voice. I speak 9 languages. Most people forget
pause.
that English.
I need to pause just to bless that. 9 languages.
Yes. What do I say? Es verdad. It's true that I speak 9 languages. I'm working seriously on my 10th, which is Mandarin. But the point is, I discovered very young the power of speaking somebody's language. In Igbo land, in our culture, when somebody speaks your language, they're automatically your brother, they're your friend, they're family. And
yes.
So I realized that these people, because Nigeria is very ethnic, very ethnicized, there's a lot of ethnicism. So I was like,
very diverse, yeah.
If I walk into the room and I say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim or Assalamu Alaikum, the person who is there sees me as, okay, you don't look it, but you're a friend, Mm. When I walk in and I speak Hausa, or I speak Yoruba, or I speak Igbo, or Efik, or, other French or Spanish, or even English, when you walk into the room and speak and you give the salutation in their language with the right intonation, they do a double take. But also they lay down their swords. And working in Texas, working close to the border where a lot of people coming through the border, I had to learn Spanish very quickly. I was like, look, I need to speak street Spanish because they taught us medical Spanish. I said, but here's the problem with that. I don't walk into the room and just say, tiene dolor, or tiene dolor de cabeza, or tiene fiebre. I have to say, buenos dias, ¿qué pasa? I have to say,
¿Qué pasa? Yes.
Like
the people.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, well, what about yesterday? What about whatever we talked about last week? How is that? how was dinner? And then before saying, so how can I help you today? So speaking street language, I needed that from medical school. I took French as a 5-year-old. So I've been into languages, like just fascinated by just being able to know what they're saying. Probably my nosiness also, but I want to know what they're saying. I want to know what they're saying. So my father was in the Air Force. We moved around Nigeria. So I lived in the West, the Yoruba land. So my med school classmate was Yoruba. I said, don't speak English to me. I want to speak Yoruba. So we learned Yoruba. And then I live in the North. I'm like, okay, great. I want to speak Hausa. The only thing I can't speak is too much Arabic because I'm not a Muslim. But, and then I'm Igbo naturally. And I was like, oh, wait, my ex-husband is a different dialect of Igbo. I want to learn that dialect. So just there's just a beauty for me in just wanting to communicate at your level, speak to you the way you want me to speak to you. So that whatever is going on with you, you will tell it to me as your doctor or as your coach.
And I love that because it says two things. One, it says, first of all, you've learned how to harness what you just said is your superpower. So your voice, you are speaking different languages to reach so many different people. And number two, I had started the question off asking you about barriers you've encountered. And so you were talking about protective factor. It looks like for you, connecting in different languages has helped you to overcome some barriers and connect with people. You said people put down their sword. And I think that's something that I want our listeners to pay attention to. I'm very fascinated by languages as well. And the way we disregard even things like Pidgin English, which is spoken in Nigeria, which everybody's into Afrobeats now, so people can Google Pidgin English if they want, or it's patois, but we're often taught not to learn these languages because it's not lucrative or dialects and things like that, but it's about connection. Now, on the flip side though, there must have been points of disconnection that maybe you had to overcome. So what comes to mind for me as a fellow Nigerian is thinking about homophobia in Nigeria. Have you experienced that from Nigerians here or abroad? Because often what happens in the context of racism is that all of our differences get flattened. And so even within group, we start to pretend that we're all the same and treat each other the same. But we actually engage in discrimination against each other, dehumanization that often traces back to colonization and the way we were taught to treat each other, but is very real. Has that been your experience or not so much as somebody who's Nigerian and self-identifies as a lesbian?
Absolutely. So, and I like that you said lesbian, and I think sometimes I'm a lesbian, sometimes I'm bisexual, but I prefer today the word queer because it's an umbrella term, it's more inclusive, we're all talking about inclusion, and because I think I'm bisexual, I think so, I think I am. I don't know that I'm evenly, but I think I am. However,
I apologize. So bisexual, queer.
Nothing to even apologize because when people ask me, so where did you get? So tell me about Dr. Lulu, and I'm like, well, so Uchenna is my first name, Lesme is my middle name, Ume is my last name, and the first L is for love, lesbian, or lollipops, and then they just kind of what? And I love it. I think people should just relax already, like. Okay, go with lollipop then. Okay, go with love. I mean, it's like whatever. Okay. However, the beauty of it is I've been going by Lulu from when I was in high school. And I just never really thought through it. And my ex-wife was like, you need to trademark that sucker. If you want to trademark it. And I was like, you're right. And so I did.
Does that mean that you used Lulu or the L? You talked about it in the context of lesbian. So did you come out or have that voice while you were in Nigeria? Like, did you self-identify as
I told my dad when I was 16.
In Nigeria.
Yes, I told my dad when I was 16 that I liked girls. And actually, it's part of my TEDx talk, my upcoming TEDx talk. The first line about me was, I said, when I was 16, I told my very traditional Catholic Nigerian father that I liked girls.
Hey.
And he shrugged his shoulders and waved it off and told me it was a phase. That's my first line. That's the first line of my TEDx talk. And then I subsequently struggled with internalized homophobia that manifested as anxiety and depression and guilt and shame about who I really was. That's part of my TEDx talk. And you would think that with that, fast forward to when my child came, I would be a better parent. But it's called lines and generations of handed down misinformation. And so even as I was queer and married to my ex-wife, when we found out that she's transgender, I pushed back. I dug my heels in. I was like, wait, what is this? And we was actually non-binary first. And I was like, wait, what? I thought you were
How
just
old was
gay.
your child at the time?
24, 23, in 2020. So 22, 22.
Oh,
Because
okay,
we're 24
okay.
now. And so that's when I found out about the non-binary. And so part of the TEDx talk is I said, even as a queer person myself, I had never heard that term before. I didn't know what it meant. And so I did what many parents erroneously do. I pushed back and demanded on what does it mean, rather than leaning in to unlearning.
Pause. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show that we have definitions in the show notes. But at this point, I'll break down some definitions for you because it'll be really hard to follow if you don't know these terms. So first, the word queer, which can mean different things to different people. For instance, it can mean being attracted to people of different genders, or someone who doesn't conform to cultural norms around gender and or sexuality. Some people within the LGBTQ2S+ community don't like the word queer at all because of how it's been historically used against them, and they reject the word entirely. I think we all have words that have been used against us historically within our communities. Some people use them, some people don't. The next definition is non-binary. This is an umbrella term that means you don't conform to the belief that all individuals are either male or female, but instead, one's identity can be more fluid than that. And of course, transgender. So transgender means a person whose gender identity does not correspond with the sex registered for them at birth. So Dr. Lulu's child was registered or assigned as male at birth, but identified later on as female. Of note, sexual orientation, basically like who you're attracted to, is a separate matter. Sexuality is different than gender identity. I hope that helps, but for more, please check out the show notes.
And so that's when I found out about the non-binary. And so part of the TEDx talk is I said, even as a queer person myself, I had never heard that term before. I didn't know what it meant. And so I did what many parents erroneously do. I pushed back and demanded on what does it mean, rather than leaning in to unlearning. So when my father said it was a phase to me, he was probably thinking about the worst case scenario. When my child says she's trans, I was also thinking about the worst case scenario. Someone is going to want to kill you. Someone is going to want to just shoot you just for being who you are. Why would you want to do that? Even as I am queer. And a lot of things that people don't realize is most intense homophobes are actually closeted queer people. And so, of course, I get the worst case of homophobia from my own people because they cannot see past their noses that why should I be living in my authenticity? Who am I to do that when they cannot? And that's the truth. It's not just my own people, but I was telling, earlier on during the pre-show, I said, I helped start my groups, my high school WhatsApp group, and I was kicked out of it. Because they're like, we don't want you to bring your homophobic stuff. But wait, we went to high school together. We knew all the people who were lesbians. We knew ourselves.
Okay, pause. Like what? Okay, so you start a WhatsApp group for your high school.
My class, yeah.
So you're the administrator. Like we all know how WhatsApp works. You're the administrator.
Honey. I was kicked out. I was the U.S. admin. I got kicked out, honey. There was a U.S. admin, a UK admin, a Nigerian. No. A lot of them reached out to me, behind, we didn't really think it was fair. I'm like, no. Don't tell me that now. The definition of an ally in my book is someone who fights for you when you're not there and with you when you're there.
Ooh,
so
I like that.
You can't check off those two boxes. You can't check one off. You're not an ally. An ally is not a spectator sport. You're digging in, rolling up your sleeves and getting dirty in the mud. That's a true ally. So coming behind and telling me, what they did to you was not right, is not the way to do it. Not that, I appreciate it, but check yourself on why you don't speak up for me in the space when I'm there and in the space when I'm not there. I mean, of course, I'm not there, so I don't know, but
yes.
But yeah, even here in San Antonio, I was talking to someone. I said the Nigerian physician community here have largely, I would say, maybe let's just leave her. She's crazy kind of thing. However, individually, they reach out to me. Oh, so my child is non-binary. Oh, so my daughter says she's a lesbian. Oh, so what do I do? I'm like, they want me to fix their kids. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about it? So it's there.
It's there. That homophobia is there. And hopefully, as time goes on, in our different communities, we start to see that change. Now, you are an agent of change, and you are dancing to the beat of your own drum, even in the context of medicine. Like you came out, board certified pediatrician, but your work is coaching, I believe, parents. Do you want to talk about the way that you practice? And I don't know if you want to call it medicine, healthcare, or just healing, right? Like how do you do what you do? Let our listeners hear about that.
By connection. I'm definitely an old school doctor. I went to medical school in the 80s when we didn't have this much technology. So I'm still very old school. I walk in the room and I literally, like I said, say salamu alaikum or hola, que pasa, or whatever language it is. Hey, what's going on? How are you doing? My name is such and such. And I'm hugging and I'm, tickling and getting all up in the kids' energy. Even before I say hello, hi, so how can I help you with your child? The old-fashioned way of connecting. So same thing with the coaching. I know as a life coach that I'm most poised to coach someone that I either am or someone that I used to be. Mm-hmm. Well, the beautiful thing about this is I used to be the queer child. Right. So when I'm talking to the parent, I'm talking in the capacity of their child. Mm-hmm. But then I am also them. I'm also a parent of a queer child. So it doesn't get any more badass than that, right?
Hey,
literally,
I like that.
I'm both people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm both. So I speak your child's language and I speak your language. And I tell myself, I made all the mistakes so you don't have to make them.
Okay, folks, coming up next, we're about to have a difficult discussion that touches on the subjects of suicide and homophobic violence. If these are traumatizing or distressing topics for you, please skip ahead by about 14 minutes and restart the podcast at 42 minutes and 45 seconds on the timeline.
So I speak your child's language and I speak your language. And I tell myself, I made all the mistakes so you don't have to make them. That's why I coach you, so you don't have to make the mistakes that I made. Because the ultimate, if you get it wrong, it's suicide. And if you get it right, it's so thriving.
Pause. She said, if you get it wrong, it's suicide. And if you get it right, it's thriving. Now, mind you, she is describing extreme scenarios, and there is a lot of room in between. But I know she's saying this because the stakes are high. Our children need love and support, and when it is not felt, the consequences can be dire. Before we go any deeper into this topic, I want to say if your child is dealing with homophobia or transphobia in their life, please listen carefully to what she has to say. And even if your child is not going through this, there may be other stigmatizing challenges they're grappling with. Let's commit as parents to being the foundation of their village and to love them unconditionally. Or, if you are personally dealing with homophobia or transphobia from those who are closest to you, please don't lose hope. Please find a way to find allies and curate your village. Create your village Plant it and grow it like a garden. Select the people who you'll have around you, because you are here, you matter, and you are enough. We have resources in the show notes for you.
That's why I coach you, so you don't have to make the mistakes that I made. Because the ultimate, if you get it wrong, it's suicide. And if you get it right, it's thriving.
And I think that it's critical. The work that you do in supporting children and youth who are part of LGBTQ2+ communities and their parents is life-saving, and it is preventive. And I want us to dive a little bit into this, because there's layers to this, right? We talked about intersectionality. There's all the different identities and the types of stigma that we need to think about. We know there is stigma, for instance, within African American populations in mental health and talking about suicide. We know that within LGBTQ youth, there's a high suicide rate. And one thing that I want to, highlight for our listeners, I've been actually speaking about this for probably about 2 years now, is the suicide rates among African American youth, right? Let alone African American LGBTQ youth. So we're going to dive in a little bit. But the study showing that they are higher than for their white counterparts right now. And to my knowledge, this is what is haunting me personally, so I want to hear from you, is that this is unprecedented in American history. And so I think to myself, despite slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, the crack epidemic, in the last decade, we're seeing African American youth and young, like we're talking about preteens, I think it's age 5 to 12, lose hope and take their lives at a rate we've never seen before. And so I wanted to hear from you on your thoughts on that. So we'll go from African American in general, then let's dive into LGBTQ youth who also have high rates. But let's start with the African American change that we've seen in suicide rates. What are your thoughts and what do we do? So let's go with the first. What are your thoughts?
I think the main thing is the word denial. And I like to say, denial is not a river in Africa. Denial is real. We are very good at saying what happens at home stays at home.com, right? I actually 2 days ago on my Instagram, I said, dear Black parent, be careful how much you blame racism as an entity for everything. Because the numbers do say that children age 5 through 12, African American children age 5 through 12, are twice as likely as their white counterparts to die by suicide. 5 through 12, five, narrow up on 5, is not racism. The child is at home with you. A 6-year-old is at home with you. A 7-year-old is at home with you. Yes, they might go to kindergarten, whatever, but you are still overwhelmingly like the strongest force in a 5-year-old's life. Right. So true, we have racism. True, I'm not saying we don't, but let us also question our parenting. Let's go there and say, what am I doing that may or may not be adding to this? A simple act of yelling. People say, oh my God, I gotta yell, or I gotta get the paddle, get the switch. That is those are the languages that we use. Yeah, you can blame racism for that if you like. But we have to give answers to God as to why a 6-year-old Black girl want to kill herself. Let's not forget that intimate partner violence, gun violence, drug addiction, true, but also when you abandon your child, you may be in the house physically with them, but are you connected to the child? Is there a true connection with the child? A 5-year-old, come on. Now, the 6-year-old Samantha, who actually died by suicide, I think her name was Samantha, she was in the foster home. So that's trauma. Now, if you go back and say, why did she end up in a foster home? If you go back, you can see why, what I'm saying, yes, there's racism. Don't get me wrong, institutionalized racism, that's true. But there's also parenting. Because there are other 5-year-olds too who didn't kill themselves. who are Black, but the ones that do, what happened? And that's why I'm not a big announcer for drugs and antidepressants and all that, because if you come down to it, the side effect is still suicidal ideation. And that is a sort of a Band-Aid. It is a sort of a Band-Aid, because if you ask the question, what happened, then you are taking responsibility for the trauma, which you and I know ACEs leads to suicide. And
do you want to describe, break down ACEs for our listeners?
No, I mean, ACEs is just adverse childhood experiences, AKA childhood trauma, just trauma.
Correct.
Just anything adverse, yes, anything extreme, an extreme childhood experience, whether it's parental just fighting and bickering, whether it's maternal drug abuse, whether it's an uncle who is incarcerated, whether it's parental divorce, whether it's, regular good old-fashioned sexual assault, or whether it's even homophobia, which we may or may not include there, but it's real. I had a guest on my podcast 2 days ago with Black, beautiful human, I think they're non-binary, and they said to me, and I quote, "I experienced homophobia and transphobia at home way before I experienced racism outside." Not my words, theirs. Yeah. So we have to be very careful about how we just toss racism. And of course, it's the root, I get it. But ultimately, as an adult, you have to make a decision and say, it stops with me. If trauma can be handed down through generations, healing can be handed down through generations. We just have to say it stops with me.
I love that. I think that's the piece. It stops with me. I think, one of the goals for me with this podcast is for us to have a clear understanding of how structural racism works. So that child who ends up in foster care, of course, there's going to be many factors of structural racism. That 5-year-old is growing up in a neighborhood that if they were in a different neighborhood, in a different context, and there were enough social supports. So yes, structural racism is part of that. But it's how can we, in the context in which we exist, because we can't change those systems. And like I said, those systems are still the systems where there was slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, everything, and the children were not killing themselves. So we have to be doing some things. And so the trauma and the need for connection, I do wonder if generations before, we still had our villages, whether it was in the church or in the neighborhood, people looked after. So even if mama was not there and mama was working 2 jobs or she had an addiction, somebody was there. I do worry that we have lost that, I would say even that African tradition of the village, of being there in that network of support. This is the thing that actually keeps me up at night with that particular statistic. That one has been haunting me for a while. And I like where you said that it stops with me. And so I think that brings us, I was going to ask you specifically about LGBTQ, but I think what you have to say about trauma and stigmatization, I think is really the crux of it. So do you want to...
Did you ever see the video that went viral on Instagram, the little 9-year-old boy? It was at the end of the pandemic. Yeah, it was at the end of the pandemic. This 9-year-old kiddo, he was surrounded by like 5 adult family members, hitting him, beating him, kicking him, spitting on him, calling him names. And one of his uncles shaved his head and carved the word gay on it. Listen, that was not racism. That was homegrown terrorism. Now, the child was now taken out of the home and put in foster care. Really? Trauma upon trauma. Now, the family members were all, I think, arrested and apprehended, whatever. But either way, somebody videoed it and went live on it. A 9-year-old boy was being beaten up by 5 adult family members, and then one of them had the nerves to carve the word gay on his head. So people kept sending me the video. I said, stop sending me the video because I get re-traumatized. I don't want to see this. I never watched it. I never watched George Floyd. I don't need to.
Neither did I. It's vicarious traumatization.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no need.
Secondary trauma. So I didn't need to. I know the story. I heard the story. I get it. I get it. One is not better than the other, but we need to be careful how the uncle that carved the word gay is probably gay. I mean, it's probably gay. And if they're not gay, then you need to ask yourself, why does it bother you so much that someone else is different? So let's be careful about othering everything. Anything that's different is a threat. That's why my child is a threat, because they're transgender. Really, they just want to be left alone. They just want to be left alone. People talk about, the bathrooms. I mean, that's a big one, right? Well, I have a question for you. Is the bathroom at your house, is it co-ed bathroom? Or do you have male and female bathrooms in your home? Is the bathroom on the plane, on the train, is it co-ed bathroom? Or do you have a male and a female bathroom? I mean, we make a big fuss about what we want to make a big fuss of.
Correct.
People, you know what I mean? Like, this is a little thing, but the truth is my child is more at risk of getting beaten up and gang raped for being in the bathroom that's affirming for them than the other way around.
And I think this is one of the things that I struggle with when it comes to transphobia and homophobia, because people will often refer to religion or whatever they want to use as an excuse. And I think that we need to stop, regardless of the religion, we need to start to think about our fellow human beings and children, and that nobody should ever be treated this way, period. And there's nothing spiritual, there is nothing religious about this type of violence that occurs in all of our communities, so not just in the Black community, but in all of our communities around people who are queer, but in particular folks who are trans. And so let me ask you, so now let's flip it. We've talked about the harms, and the harms can, from what I heard you say, happen from the parent and the stigma, the shame, the silencing. It can happen from the sense of isolation, not having, other people to connect with. But you mentioned that healing starts with us. So what do we do? What are the different things that we can do, whether it's dealing with our own internal homophobia or other forms of stigma? Like, what do we do when we're thinking about how we reduce the suicide rates in youth, going through these things?
Particular. Yes. Thank you for that question. So I came up with my webinar. I have this thing called the U squared. U squared is Uche na Ume, but also U squared is unlearning and unpacking. And so there's this quote by Antisthenes, I don't know, some Greek philosopher. The most useful piece of learning for the uses of life is to unlearn what is untrue. I wrote that in a WhatsApp group this morning because I posted something about how colonialism is where homophobia began.
Thank you.
Whether we like it or not, ancient Igbo women took wives. My people took wives. The jury is out as to what they took the wives for, but they did take wives. Ancient history has it that multiple across West Africa and even Africa as a whole, we had same gender, same sex unions, and it was never a problem.
And there seems to be non-binary people in our history too.
I was coming to the fact that in Igbo land, yes, ma'am, you're right. I was coming to the fact that in Igbo language, we have they, them pronouns, and that's it. There's no he or she. Our ancient language is they, them. Or is they, them. Now, when you talk a little bit more, then we know the context, if it's a male or a female. But our pronouns, just like the ancient, the indigenous in America,
yes,
they have the two-spirit. It was the colonialists that came and drove them out, that they are evil, but they were the teachers. I told somebody, I said, I think maybe I was a two-spirit, if there was such a thing in Igbo land, because I am fully in connection with my masculine and my feminine energy. I love being able to have my masculine energy because I need it for some things. But then again, I love to wear a nice one-shoulder dress and be a feminine girly girl. So the thing about it is, this thing I wrote because I had in a WhatsApp group, I posted about this colonial thing. I said, just so you know, this is from whence it came. And then I had a couple of people, indirectly respond to me. So today I just took 2 days to breathe and then wrote back. And I said, at some point, it becomes disingenuous to watch people remain in ignorance. At that point, it becomes a shame and a choice. But we are all grown adults. And when you choose to push your one-sided homophobic ideas down other innocent people's throats, you must ask yourself, why? Why do you feel like your best course is to put other people down?
Pause. There is so much to unpack here because of the tension of religion and homophobia and being a Black or BIPOC person. First of all, it has been well documented in research literature that queer people of color face unique and complex challenges because they experience discrimination in dominant society and within their own racialized communities. This is due to many factors, but religion is a significant driver of this issue, like the discrimination and violence that Black queer people experience within Black communities. In this case, the term sacramental shame is very relevant here. Sacramental shame is a form of stigma inflicted by conservative Christians who position heterosexuality as being basically God's will and shame LGBTQ2S+ folks. Now, that is the same lens that also normalized whiteness and historically made it godlike to be white and positioned all other humans on Earth who basically had melanated skin as inherently inferior or further from God. So we need to look at these issues with a critical awareness because religion, particularly the Christian religion, was weaponized against us in the process of colonization and slavery. This is largely where we learned to hate ourselves and violently reject queer people. My point here is not to knock religion or how biblical texts have been misused, but the point is we need to be aware of how this form of a learned oppression plays out within our different communities and the consequences for our children.
But we are all grown adults, and when you choose to push your one-sided homophobic ideas down other innocent people's throats, you must ask yourself, why? Why do you feel like your best course is to put other people down? Why are you choosing to remain in that much pain? Thankfully, no one has died yet and gone to a heaven filled with evangelicals, the same ones that would most likely shoot Jesus in the back if he walked on today's earth. We were called to love and do so unfreaking conditionally, no strings attached. Sadly, today's foremost Christians miss the basic rule in their search for pureness. That same Jesus preached about that, drove them out of his Father's house, and warned us against them. I said, Happy Friday. Never mistake one's silence for ignorance, and never ever assume you know someone's ultimate destination until you also get there. Because we don't know who's going where. But one thing we're asked to do was just to love. Guess what? I put that post at 6:00 this morning. No one dare respond. Because I'm asking them to ask themselves why. You can quote every Bible verse you like, but we are given 2 commandments that trumped all the commandments. And unless you are doing that, then we're not having a conversation. This is not about
2 commandments are you referring to?
Love thy father and with all thy might and love and everything, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. 2. That was the summary of the 10.
Yeah.
Yes. And so ultimately, I used to teach Bible study when I was a younger version of me. So Bible, bring it, Okay. But the point I'm trying to make is I want people to know that this is not about one sin better than another sin. Being queer, being gay, unless God makes mistakes, I am 100% convinced that I'm a woman, phenomenally. And so I cannot tell you, Dr. O, that you're not if you say you're a man. You know what I mean? Like, it's not up to me to argue, well, why are your pronouns they, them? Well, why are your pronouns?
But let's go back to the U squared. Bring me back to the U squared. So we are deep in the unlearning. You just took us through the unlearning. We have to start to question what we have been, not even spoon-fed, but force-fed through the process of colonization. And then what is the second U so that we can support our youth? Can you repeat it again?
I mean, it's very simple. Unlearn and unpack.
Unpack it.
Unpack and if you want to make it a third U, unpack the untruths. The truth is that they're not true. They're not true. If we had all these things pre-colonial, these are the same people that came and stole our artwork, stole everything of ours, took it to their museums and told us that our stuff was not good.
Yes.
So how do you choose which one to take? You can't. You have to choose them or you have to love them or leave them. Yes.
Yeah, you have to look at it.
And once you know better, you do better. So unlearn, I had to unlearn and then unpack a lot for me to see that in my own child growing up, the one thing I always said was stop acting like a girl. Stop acting like a girl. And then she would say, Mom, but how do girls act? This is my own child.
Because she was just being herself.
Exactly. Thank you.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So I had to go back and do a lot of critical thinking like, wait. You're right. You've always been a girl. And it's funny, I wrote a text message one time to her. I said, I've always wanted to have a daughter to go shopping with. You know what she said? She said, Mom, you've always had a daughter. Aww. So profound. I was like, wow.
So as a parent, as an auntie, as, whomever we might be, uncle or I don't know the non-binary term. So let's say just family member. There's a young person going through, either they're thinking they're non-binary, they've recognized that they're trans, they're different, they've recognized that in their spirit, or they're going through some other change in life for which our society stigmatizes them. Mm-hmm. What is your advice to that parent or family member? How do we help that youth so that we can move them along that journey away from thinking that the only answer is ending their life? What else should we do once we've unlearned and unpacked? What's next?
Acceptance and affirmation. Affirmation is a little bit different from acceptance. Acceptance is like, okay, you want to wear the blouse? Fine.
You're tolerating. Yeah.
Affirmation is, how do you think the blouse is on you? The blouse makes me look beautiful, then you are beautiful. That's affirmation. Affirmation is saying that what you say you are is indeed true. Es verdad. It is true that you is beautiful, you is smart, you is gifted. So for the queer child, I'll say 2 words. Hold on. Hold on. Because you will grow up and you will find your tribe. You will find people that will affirm you. You will find people that will say, come and be with us. You don't have to be anything but who you are. Hold on. To the adult, I'll say, check your thoughts about yourself. Bring yourself out of the closet. Like literally, I don't use the word coming out. I don't even use the word closet for LGBT people because they were born the way they were. And I went back and I looked up the history of the closet metaphor. It's a cis white male rhetoric. Course,
okay.
Right? However, they were never in a closet. Now, one of the things I talk about in the TED Talk is I ask you, so when your living room is messed up and you hear the doorbell, what do? You quickly look around the room and pick up everything you can pick and shove it in the closet.
Yes.
Hide it. Keep it away from sight. Secret. Why is your child relegated to that space of secrecy, of being a closet? Why? Whose idea was it to have a closet anyway? Have you met have you met RuPaul? Have you met the energy that comes from a gay man? Right. You want to put that in a closet.
In a closet.
And then I say, however, when your child shares with you, reveals to you, invites you into their queer world, you have a choice to make. Are you going to now rush into the closet, you as a parent, and hide in there? Because heaven forbid that you are a parent of a queer child. Or are you going to have your arms wide open and say, come to me so that I am not I don't become your first bully. Your child is going to meet bullying. They're going to meet ostracization. They're going to meet homophobia, violence. They're going to meet moral condemnation. All of that they're going to meet. Your decision is, am I going to be the safe space? Am I going to be the safe person for my child? And hug your child and say, bring it in. You and I against the world, knowing that your child is going to fight. Your child is going to be gay, whether you like it or not. Your child is going to be gay, whether you're alive or dead. So your choice is, my child, we're going to be gay together, and fight this world outside.
Yeah.
Or are you going to hide and say, what are people going to think about me? The first words at the back of my new book is, Mom, it's not about you. That's what my child said to me. Mom, it's not about you. Because I was making it about myself. Oh, what are they going to say? What's the church going to say? What this is, all of this, I was getting all up in my own feelings. And I forgot that, wait, there's a human being here who God gave to me. Yes. And so the question to ask yourself, the ultimate question is, what does my child need from me today?
Yes. And that's why it starts with us. And that's why the work that you're doing is so important, and it is life-saving. It is preventive. So as you know, I'm a public health and preventive medicine.
Yes, it's the ultimate form of preventative medicine. That's what I say. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So I think it's powerful. It is important. It is what we need to think about as parents, but also, like I said, as family members, as whatever form of the village, the beginning of creating that tribe of support around a child.
Yes.
Now,
it takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a village to save a child. So will you be part of that village? So the webinar is titled 5 Simple Mental Health Shifts that parents can use to accept, understand, and support their LGBTQ plus kids. My book is called Invited In, How to Become the Parent Your Queer Child Needs. And my online course is called Becoming the Parent Your Queer Child Needs. I really need parents to become the parent that their children need. So you can find me across all social media. If you type Dr. Lulu, I'm actually like the first 4 pages. I'm excited about that.
Hey.
And if you go on Instagram at Dr. Lulu Talk Radio, and I'm everywhere else, but I just want people to know that the webinar is available, and people can go there and just learn how to start thinking, because that's really ultimately where our feelings and our actions come from, our thoughts. So I'm excited about that. So thank you so much for the space. Thank you for the platform. I appreciate it. And y'all go get any of my books and holla at your girl. Let's make it happen.
All right. And so the work that you do is incredibly powerful. I imagine there are times incredibly difficult. And so one of the major questions that we ask as we start to conclude our podcast, I always ask, what brings you joy? Because with all of this hard work, with all of this outreach, with some of the heartbreak, I imagine I'm a clinician as well. There's a need for joy to keep doing this work. So, Dr. Lulu, what brings you joy?
Believe it or not, it's the littlest things. I might be walking my dog and I'll just feel a gush of wind just come and just ruffle my hair. Little things like that. And I just kind of take it all in. A lot of times I'm a nature lover. I'm walking down the street and I see one tiny little yellow flower. And I just stand and I just watch it and just look at it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if that flower can survive, so can I. But when it comes down to human beings, I am just intrigued by the strength of the millennials. They are a force to reckon with.
Yes.
1 in 6 millennials is queer. 1 in 6 millennials identifies as not straight. I love that group of humans. They have banded together. They love nature. They're all about global warming and just trying to right wrongs. As long as we, the old people, can get out of their way. Millennials, They got it. They are weird in their own way, But I tell you, they're accepting. I love y'all. I love that you have found the answer. You know what love is. And you're resilient as I don't know what. I love that. It's beautiful. Don't change. I hope you dance. I hope you find a sense of wonder. I hope you just keep hope alive. I just hope that. And so I'm just happy when I see a queer child or a teenager who is just like kind of just owning all of the different things that make them amazing and creative and beautiful and awesome. They have the answer, the young ones. So those people make me smile.
I love it. Love, hope, authenticity. That's what we need more of in the village. Dr. Lulu, thank you so much for being my guest on Race, Health, and Happiness.
De nada, de nada.
The Race, Health, and Happiness podcast was created by Dr. Ani Norum, and she's our host. I'm Dr. Carl Cabasel, executive producer of the show. Our technical producer is Obadiah George. Our showrunner is Cam, and JL Joseph is associate producer. Promotions coordinator is Jordan Gibson, and Javiera Violeta Duran Quieres is our logistics coordinator. Tamika E. Latibaudiere is our research consultant, and Corinne Bent Womack is our anti-racism consultant. Our student associate producers are Xavier Oshinowo and Afia McIntosh. Veronica Ng is our graphic design consultant, and the RHH theme song is composed and performed by Gold Keys. Special thanks to Awit Siem and Darrell Carpentier for their voiceover work. Do you have questions, feedback, ideas to share? We would love to hear from you. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at Race Health Happy, and check out the show notes for research that was referenced in this episode, as well as other bonus material. Our website is racehealthhappiness.com. Thank you for listening to Race, Health, and Happiness, and please subscribe to us anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. This is Dr. Carl. On behalf of the whole RHH team, we'll talk with you soon.
The Race, Health, and Happiness podcast is brought to you with help from Toronto Metropolitan University and with support from subscribers and listeners like you. Overcome the obstacles of racism while staying happy and healthy. Donate today at patreon.com/racehealthhappy. We are learning together to thrive. Thank you for your support. The Race, Health, and Happiness podcast is made better by the skills, knowledge, and creative passion of the journalism students who work right here on the show. These students join us from Toronto Metropolitan University. Thank you for the hard work, folks. We appreciate you.